Hello everybody, and welcome to the Natural Center at the California Academy of Sciences. My name is Alex, and today we're going to be looking at some pretty interesting specimens. Now let's take a look at them right now, and take a moment to think about what they are. Do you recognize any of them? If you know what they are, maybe shout it out. That's right. These are shells. Have you seen shells before? Think back to a time you might have seen a shell, perhaps like one of the ones you see on the table right here. Maybe you were walking on the beach and saw a clam shell, like this one. Or perhaps you were walking in a park or through a yard and found a snail shell, just like this one. Maybe you've seen jewelry made out of them. I can understand, because these shells are natural works of art. I think they're some of the coolest structures we can find in nature. Can you think of an animal that has a shell? Maybe you were thinking of turtles, crabs, oysters, or snails. Many animals have shells, but the ones that we call seashells, like the snail shell, are from animals called mollusks. So what exactly is a shell? Well, a shell is a hard outer covering that protects the animal from both predators and its environment. It's kind of like a suit of armor and a home all rolled up into one. Shells like the snail shell, right over here, are made up of calcium carbonate. It's a type of material that can be found in the ocean. Our own bones are made of calcium as well. Go ahead, you can very lightly tap your head to feel how sturdy your skull is. And that's because of the calcium in our bones. Now other shells, like crab shells or this turtle shell, are made up of a material called keratin. Keratin in our bodies is the stuff our fingernails are made out of. Most shelled animals have soft inner bodies, so their shells provide protection for them. Whether they're clams, snails, or any other type of mollusks, a shell provides a safe space to retreat from the environment and their predators. Other non-mollusk animals use their shells for protection as well. For example, the shell of a lobster, also called the exoskeleton, protects them from smaller predators. On the other hand, while turtles can't fully retreat into their shells, the turtle shells are still strong enough to protect them from large predators like sharks. As shelled animals grow, their shells need to grow with them too. Otherwise, there wouldn't be enough room in the shell for the growing animal. This has caused shelled animals, especially mollusks, to find some really smart ways to work around the spacing issue. Speaking of mollusk shells, let's take a look at one right now. Many species of mollusks grow their shell in a cone or a spiral shape. Now think back to some snail shells you might have seen. Have you seen any spiral shells before, maybe in your garden? Another example of a spiral-shaped mollusk shell is the nautilus shell right here, which is an animal closely related to squids and octopuses. The reason that these shells grow in this shape is because a cone allows for both the shell and the animal to grow while maintaining the overall shape of the shell. Now imagine if we had an animal with a shell shaped like a cube. How would we expand this shell to give more room for this animal to grow? Well, one of the ways that we could do that is by expanding one face of this cube outward like this. But then, we'd end up with a rectangular shell that jutted out from the animal's body. This would be pretty awkward to see on a snail shell. It would be kind of like if you had a backpack that stuck out from you at about 4 feet. It'd be pretty hard to carry around. So for a nautilus shell, this spiral shape lets them retain their original shell shape while the animal grows. Clamshells also keep their same shape by adding on to the ends of their shells in this sort of fan-like structure. Turtle shells, on the other hand, have these sections called scutes that fall out and let the shell grow underneath them. And finally, crustaceans, like this lobster tail right over here, what they do is they molt their exoskeleton. So when a lobster or a crab grows too big for their shell, they'll shed the entire shell and regrow a larger one in a couple of days. Many of these shelled animals grow their shells by absorbing calcium carbonate directly from the water. We humans also use calcium to grow our bones, but we get it from the things that we eat and drink instead. However, Nowadays, it might be harder for these shelled animals to grow their shells underwater. And that's because of something called carbon dioxide. Now everybody take in a deep breath and let it out. Whew. When we humans breathe in, we absorb oxygen into our bodies. And when we breathe out, we release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. We can also release carbon dioxide by burning fossil fuels like coal or gasoline. And because there's so much carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, a good chunk of it gets absorbed by our ocean, which makes it more acidic. In more acidic oceans, shelled animals like these snails have a tougher time building their shells, which spells bad news if they're relying on these shells to protect them from predators or the harsh environments that they live in. Now, we humans can reduce the amount of carbon dioxide that we emit through pretty simple ways, simply by biking to wherever we're going, carpooling with a friend, or taking public transportation. All of these things help reduce the amount of carbon dioxide that we emit and makes it a little easier on these shelled animals and lets them grow their shells a bit better. And I certainly want to make sure that these shelled animals keep creating their works of art the best that they can be. So the next time that you go to a beach or a forest and you see a shell, take a moment to appreciate the art that's been a million years in the making. Because art like that should be preserved and appreciated. All right, well, thank you so much for watching, folks. I hope you learned something new today. Feel free to share what you learned with a friend or a caregiver. But once again, thank you so much for joining me, everybody, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.